Hey, we're live on the Home Buyer Seminar. Welcome. I'm Bill Gross, Apple Gross Probate and Social Media, along with my good friend and colleague.
Patricia Castillo.
And she said Patricia, but she goes by Pat, just FYI, for people who really know her. Not that I'm feeling raw about that, to discover that. Just kidding. So, wow, the home market is heated up. I mean, even though rates went up a bit as a result of things going on in the Middle East,
hmm
buyers making offers, things going into escrow. So I know, Pat, you're talking about some of the issues that buyers face and things that to be careful of. Talk a little bit about what a buyer can do to prepare themselves to be successful and close, not just get into escrow and spend money.
Yes, that's a really good topic because I'm closing on a buyer in probably by Monday or Tuesday, and I met them a year ago. So, talking about getting a plan in place, getting ready. We were actually in escrow in November on two different properties. The first one just didn't work out, too many issues. That's why it's important to do your home inspection. The second property, the seller actually gave us most of the repairs that we had asked for. They just didn't do a good job, and these were repairs that were a little more invasive than just cosmetic. And my buyer just felt very uneasy, very uncomfortable, so we canceled. So now fast forward, we're in escrow on their third home, and in the meantime they've been saving money, they've been paying off some debt. They were already pre-qualified before, but when you're purchasing a property, there's going to be maintenance that you're going to have. You're going to have a supplemental tax bill as well a few months after you close escrow. And so, what my clients were worried about was, okay, we're going to buy a home. It's the homes in Downey, Norwalk, Pico Rivera. They're built in anywhere from the 30s to the 50s. So one of the concerns is, are we going to have future maintenance and what kind of maintenance? So these are things that we talk about when we're initially doing the pre-qualification and getting a buyer ready so that they can prepare and know what the future holds. So start putting away some money aside from your down payment and closing costs. It's good to have a reserve for home maintenance. Maybe you have a pipe in the plumbing that just suddenly collapsed because it's an older home. A lot of the flips are more lipstick flips out here that investors are buying, and they do the flooring painting, put in new appliances, and the home looks beautiful. But they didn't do any of the big ticket items like replace the water heater, replace the plumbing, replace the roof. So these are things that are the larger ticket items, and if those items come up on your inspection that are maybe halfway through the life expectancy, then you can plan to pay for that in the future, right? You're going to have some kind of maintenance cost. So these are all things that we talk about because a first time buyer is really not going to know what questions to ask or what to prepare for. So these are things that we lay out in the beginning. We go over all of the pros and cons, right, of buying a property that needs some work. You could buy a property that needs some TLC, and just know that you're going to have some expenses, right? You're going to have to replace some things like plumbing. Maybe you're going to have to do some patching on the roof. Insulation. Some homes are older, they don't have insulation. So these are things that would come up on your home buyer inspection. But we also talk about this before we even get to that point, just so the buyer is prepared. They know what to look for, and they also feel more confident and informed going into the process. So these are some of the things that we cover.
And what happens when buyers aren't prepared and they, let me back up a bit. When you said home inspection, you don't mean inspect the property as in they go in and look at the property. You mean hire a professional home
Right.
inspector, usually a contractor, who gives a professional detailed inspection beyond what a buyer might, beyond what you and I as a realtor might, an actual, typically they're contractors, right? So what does that look like different than a buyer might experience when they look at it on their own?
Well, when a buyer looks at a property, we're looking at the aesthetics of the property, things that we can see with the naked eye. An inspector is going to crawl under the house if there's a crawl space, crawl up in the attic. They're going to check the electrical panel. They're going to look under the sinks, run the water, see if there are any leaks, or see if there's any moisture underneath the kitchen cabinets. Those are things that we do not do during a walkthrough, right? We schedule maybe 4 showings in a day, take maybe 20 minutes to walk around the property, see if the floor plan works, the bed and bath count, everything, backyard, front yard, things that are important to the buyers. And then after that, we schedule a home inspection. So there's a lot of things that we can't see when we're walking through a property. That's why it's important to have a contractor look at the property. And in fact, one of the properties that I showed yesterday in Whittier, the buyer came with their handyman. So they said, we want to come look at the property. We know it's going to need a little bit of work. So we're bringing our handyman just to save some time. And I thought that was a really good um, strategy that they did. So they came in, they looked at the property, we walked the property together, and the handyman was giving them tips. And now they're coming up with an estimate on what they think it might cost to fix all these things.
Yeah, it doesn't matter what somebody might charge you. It's really what, if you're going to fix it, what you're really going to need fixed or not. I'll never forget when I sold the last house that I lived in that we sold. They had an inspector, and then they went through and added up to fix everything. And so, like, one of the things was behind our doors, you had like those little springy things, that keeps the door from hitting the wall.
Right.
And out of maybe, I don't know, 20 in the house, like 6 were broken or bent or something. And a couple of them had little damages in the wall where the door stayed closed all day long, but whatever reason. And the buyer was like, "Want to charge us for that?" I said, "Well, I mean, we lived here for 5 years. It didn't bother us. We weren't going to fix it. Like, I think you might want to, improve your house. There's nothing wrong with that. But I do think that you want to make sure you have an inspector who understands that these things cost money and what do you really need." And it sounds like when you just ask the seller to pay for it, it sounds like you're going to like you won the prize on a TV show where you get a shot for free. But it's not that way. The seller, if they give you one thing, you're going to not get something else. And so it's best to have an inspector you can rely on and give you the fair tips as far as really what you want to get and what you don't want to get.
Right. And the other thing to keep in mind is that the cost of supplies has also increased.
Yeah.
Cost of drywall, cost of lumber, things like that. So if you're thinking of, I was showing a client that wanted a 2-bedroom, but it was pushing them over their approval price. So I said, well, in the future, add the second bathroom, right? But you also have to get a quote on that just so you have a basic reference of what it's going to cost you. Of course, if you wait 5 years to add that second bathroom, the cost could go up by then, but at least you have a point of reference to start with.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, and that's the keyest thing. You have to have some real numbers and something you might want to do down the road. And of course, costs go up, but at least you have a ballpark, and I think that's fantastic. So, what happens when you do the inspection and you think things will cost more than the seller does? Right? You go through a property, and we've had this happen where the seller thinks the house is in pretty good shape, and the buyer comes back and says, "Hey, here's a report, and here's all the defects, and it's going to cost us $10,000 to fix these things. So we want to credit." So, what does that look like in practice?
Right. So normally you have to have the supporting documentation, right? Because a buyer could think, well, what if this cost me $5,000 to fix? There's a leak in the bathroom, for example. We have to replace the vanity cabinet because now the vanity is, the wood is deteriorated. Um, so those are items that you would get estimates on. So I normally will have a second contractor come out. Let's say we have the home inspection done first. After that, we look at the more important items that are related to safety or hazardous. Because the other thing to consider is when you see the property, you see what you're buying. You can't really ask the seller to replace the carpet because you don't like the color, right? So those aren't things that are considered under the hazardous or safety category. So I'll bring in if it's a roof issue, for example, maybe there's some cracked tiles. We want to see what it's going to cost to repair those. Then I'll bring in a roofer to give us a detailed explanation on what it's going to cost And the other thing is if there's a chimney, that would be a completely different inspection. The home inspector does not inspect chimneys. The home inspector does not inspect swimming pools. So you would bring in a different contractor to, or excuse me, inspector to look at the chimney and look at the pool. So when they give you, let's say the pool pump is not functioning or it's leaking, you would want to get an estimate on that. Obviously, you need it to be operational for you to operate, use the pool and enjoy it. So the practice is getting the estimates, having the right documentation to support your request. And even then, it's just a request. And I explain to my clients when they're purchasing a property, we can make this request and have all of our documents lined up. And this is where the negotiation comes in because the seller has the right to not respond or respond, meet the buyer halfway, and see what's really going to work so we can have a meeting of the minds to move forward.
Yeah, and the goal is to help your seller get, or your client get the best result. But sometimes that's tough, right? And I try to explain to buyer's agents a seller's lack of response is response, right? When the buyer will ask for $30,000, and I say the fact the seller didn't say no doesn't mean they're not saying no. They didn't respond, and your offer, expired. So it's the same as a no. I think that this is where as an agent, my job is to kind of control the emotions as best I can, whether it be for good or for bad for my client. And this is what you have a real estate agent for. This is where you don't buy your house on Zillow or Google because you're not going to get representation. You're not going to get somebody to fight for you to get you the best outcome.
Right. And so that's one of the things when you're dealing with a for sale by owner, let's say, and a buyer comes in, makes an offer, you want to make sure that as a buyer, you have all of the proper disclosures from
Yeah.
the seller, which a buyer wouldn't even know what those are because they wouldn't
Right.
know what to ask for.
Right.
But that's why it's important to have professional representation.
It's funny how times I do a deal where the buyer is an agent and they have no clue what the requirements are for disclosures and they're representing themselves. I always feel like I always tell my seller that's good news for us because you always want the other side to have a weak representative. My job is to get my client the best outcome. So
Right.
I like to make friends. I try to be nice, but sometimes it can't be. It's just the way it goes. Okay, so I know you're busy. Busy weekend. I know I'm busy. We got some new listings. We have a new listing coming on tomorrow. It's on the market in Los Alamitos. You're holding it open actually. I think today and
Today's
Sunday, but you're
yes,
not holding it open tomorrow. That's interesting. You're holding it open on Friday
Friday.
and Sunday, but not tomorrow. Why is that, Pat? Why are you not holding open Saturday, but you're Friday and Sunday?
Tomorrow I'm taking a day
Yes.
to spend with family, and I think the weather is looking pretty nice, so we may hang out at the Arboretum tomorrow. It's my
Anything
birthday.
special tomorrow that's causing you to meet with your friends and family tomorrow?
Yes, I'm having a birthday. I'm turning another year older. Yeah.
Wow, she's going from 29 to 30, everybody. And I didn't want to bring it up myself, so since you mentioned, but anybody here on the call, feel free to wish Pat a happy birthday, many more. It's been a pleasure working with you. And yet, she's working today, holding Los Alamitos from 4 to 6 tonight, Friday, and Sunday as well, holding it open. Do you want to talk a little bit about that listing, or we pretty much have that marketed and we're in pretty good shape on that one?
Yeah, bring up the pictures so we can look at
Okay.
it together.
Okay, let me
This
see.
is in the Rossmore tract. The area borders Los Alamitos and Seal Beach, and it the home was actually painted on the exterior. It was painted, and new rain gutters were installed in December 2025, so just a few months ago. It was built in 1957. It has four bedrooms and two baths. It could be updated on the inside. The kitchen is actually in good shape, and the lot size is 7,074 square feet. The interior space is 1,967 square feet. So it's a pretty sizable property. There's a detached two-car garage, huge driveway, ample parking, really beautiful neighborhood. There's two popular elementary schools. That's a living room there with a fireplace. That's a primary bedroom. Um, so 4 bedrooms, 2 bath, laminate flooring and tile throughout the property. Lots of trees in the back. Really nice property, and there's nothing at this price in Rossmore.
Yeah.
I've had quite a few calls already for people that were trying to get to see the property. It's like they're trying to beat the open house tonight and this weekend.
Right.
Um, but it's listed at a very appealing price. I think that we're going to have a really good outcome this weekend. So if you'd like to see it, stop by today or give me a call.
Yeah, I know. We actually received an offer on it. Now, sometimes you get offers before people see the property, and you're not sure how legitimate it is. But I mean, there are people. This is a hot, area, a very desirable area of has been my entire life. I grew up in La Habra, North Orange County, and Rossmore is a part of Los Alamitos, and it's always been desirable. It's near a lot of work and jobs and good school system, and so this is, I think, the lowest price active listing in that area for single family homes. So.
It sure is. For
It's
that size,
fun.
4 bedrooms, 2 bath.
So if you want to see it, contact Patricia and she'll set you up there today, Friday, 4 to 6 p.m. or Sunday. She will not be available tomorrow because it's her birthday, but feel free to call her and wish her a happy birthday or text her happy birthday if you want to as well. We love Pat and really appreciate her help. And it's been a joy working together with you and many, many more years of happiness for you. So I think we'll wrap up. Patricia, what's the best way to get a hold of you?
My phone number, 323-365-9909. Feel free to call her.
And I'm Bill Gross at Bill Gross Probate on social media. And if I can help any way, please reach out. If you watch us like this, put a comment in, send us a message. We'd love to get your feedback. I know we did a live stream today, which we don't usually do live, but put a comment in. We'll respond to you. As always, make today your best day ever. Thanks so much, everybody.
Bye.